Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Bear Guys and 2T Fitness.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the Batman edition. We are talking Batman Returns today. I am Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards from Pacific Beach. Joining me, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions in the closet from Chula Vista. Hello, Tom.
Must you be the only lonely man-beast in town?
How great is he?
Oh, Alfred, I mean...
Michael Gough.
It's pan movie, though, how good Michael Gough's Alfred is. I don't think there's ever a dip there. I mean, they have him doing ridiculous things in some movies compared to others, but I think the performance is... to me, it doesn't feel like the performance ever ends. We just only see...
Mm-hmm.
We only see the three movies. I think in between those movies, he's still Alfred.
Fucking great.
I think he keeps up his duties between movies. That's what his performance feels like.
Yes.
He's the rock
not
of
an
this
actor.
series.
He is the character. Yeah.
He's the rock of this series. I mean, him and Commissioner Gordon, but Commissioner Gordon becomes more of a buffoon.
Oh man, I was gonna say that, like, what you notice about Pat Hingle from the first Batman movie,
Where he's a competent police officer.
where he's a competent police officer in charge who people look to, and what he becomes by the time he's in Batman and Robin
is Basil Exposition from the Austin Powers movie.
Oh yeah, it's
Literally, he appears on a car screen like Michael York in Austin Powers.
Yes. Fucking great.
With a Technicolor mustache.
He's got his great moment of acting for the Poison Ivy scene.
It's kind of like what Key and Peele said about what's his name? Oh God, people are gonna kill me. From Al from Die Hard 2. At least I got the character name right. What's the name of the actor?
Al Powell?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Michael.
Wait.
At least we got the Die Hard 2 character down.
Oh shit.
That's all that matters. Anyway, I've
been drinking beer, Tom.
But how his role in what was the name of the show?
Family Matters?
Family Matters, yeah. Like what he became in like
Reginald Vell Johnson.
Reginald Vell Johnson, his kind of like off-screen arc of basically disappearing while Urkel, accelerated
Ascended,
into the limelight.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of the same for Commissioner Gordon here. It's like he's part of the crime-fighting team at the beginning of the Batman movies. By the end of it, he is like fucking Oliver Hardy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's insane. But we're not there yet. Today,
No.
ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about Tim Burton's vision, Batman Returns, a 1992 film. I mean, if you don't know Tim Burton, I don't know what to do for you. I'm not going to list all the movies, but there are many, and they are varied. But they all feel like Tim Burton.
Sure do.
All right, Tom, this movie...
And also German Expressionism.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. So at play in this movie.
Oh my God. This movie has a 1920s movie fetish like I've never seen.
Yeah, for sure.
And is all the better for it.
This movie, this is, for the sequels we're talking about, this movie by far outweighs the others, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. But I think has a reputation of being a weak sequel, probably monetarily. It had an $80 million budget, got more than half its money back on its opening weekend, $45.6 million, gathered $162.9 million in the USA, $266.8 cumulatively in the world. So, look, this movie's a smash hit.
Right.
And yet, it has this reputation of being unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Which kind of pisses me off.
It pisses me. I mean, it's all about the elephant in the room, which is the 1989 Batman.
Mm-hmm.
What that did financially, and also, you know, what it was on screen versus what this movie is on screen.
Yes.
So, you know, we talked a little bit in the minisode that, I mean, you said quite rightly, is that this, you know, the original Batman is muffled Burton. So there are Tim Burton touches, but basically it's a studio superhero big screen adaptation. You know, and largely an action movie. This movie is incredibly, you know, it's almost entirely character based. It sees its characters psychologically. It's very, very political, which is something that really struck me this time.
Yeah.
In a way that, you know, if you're watching this movie now, you find that it's actually really resonant in what it says about gender and wealth and and the media. You know, when we also talked a little bit about how it's just Tim Burton style let loose. Unleashed, right.
You know,
if you think about the original Batman, it because I think largely because of Jack Nicholson and the Joker and where that storyline takes you, it felt like a kind of a piece of film noir or a gangster movie.
Well,
and
both these movies feel very noir.
But this is like an adult fairy tale. That's where I put this.
Right.
It feels more like, to me, like fantasy, magic, fairy tale, but also I think more adult in the themes it covers than the original Batman. Like, the psychosexual stuff here is through the fucking roof.
Fucking great.
I wouldn't feel comfortable showing this to anyone under 25. And I know I'm a prude about these things.
But that's a big complaint for the movie. And to your point, because I'm looking at the numbers right now, that first Batman movie, by the way, a budget of only $35 million.
Live accounting from Michael Shantz on the Everything Sequel podcast.
But it grossed in the USA $251 million, which is almost $100 million more than this sequel, and over 400 in the world. So I guess you could see why studios started getting cold feet about a third movie from Tim Burton.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
It's funny.
This is far more about Tim Burton as an auteur, and you can see why the studio wouldn't be interested in that, especially in a movie that marginalizes Batman to the extent that this one does.
Yeah, that this movie does. But it just seems to me that they did not know, nobody knew what to do with this movie when it came out.
Yeah, I fully understand that, yeah. It's, well, I mean, you know, like right from the outset of this movie, it's reframing itself as an entirely different genre, and and also a completely different focus. This movie to me is, you know, Batman is almost the villain of this movie because we're getting so much through the perspective of the villain, of the, you know.
Well, but that's a Tim Burton thing, right? I mean, this
brilliant.
Movie is, it's great. This movie is
it's an
through
inversion
the point of view of the Misfits.
This
is a Catwoman Penguin movie.
It's Catwoman versus Penguin, featuring Batman. Actually, no, featuring Shrek with Batman. And I already did the statistics in the minisode. 13 minutes before Batman's mentioned and appears, 20 more minutes before he appears again.
Don't care.
No, and you know what?
Also, because of how great it's done.
The
theme of duality in this movie to me is fucking amazing.
Yes.
And this idea that we wait so long to see even Bruce Wayne, and the idea that he's just sitting in a darkened room, essentially waiting to become his alter ego, and then the Batman logo appears, is like, it gives me chills even just talking about it right now.
But it's
That's
also
fucking great.
But what's also brilliant in terms of like, because there are unanswered questions about from the last movie about what happened to Vicky Vale and that kind of stuff, and that opening shot of him alone in that dark room, I'm like, guess he's not with Kim Basinger anymore.
No. That relationship did not work.
And they speak to that in the so it's a very skillfully done piece of sequel writing. They don't make too much of a big thing about it, but they eventually address why
they address it. Yeah,
they give a story reason, and interestingly,
to me,
you just said, it was difficulty with duality is the reason given to why that didn't work. So they find a thematic way to get around the fact that Kim Basinger's not in this movie, which is great.
Which makes sense, yeah. And I think that's the most remarkable thing to me about this movie in general, is how deftly it handles what came before it with what's happening now.
Completely. And I think one of the things that really interests me, because I'm talking devil's advocate about, I'm thinking, what would a stupid person think, or what would a studio executive, I don't know why I'm differentiating the two, would think. Like, I'm trying to get into their heads. In terms of what I actually think, is that marginalizing Batman, certainly in terms of screen time compared to the original and whatever else comes afterwards, that's absolutely true. On paper, you see that he's not in the movie as much. The focus isn't on him as much. But the focus is still on him, because Penguin and Shrek are like grotesque parallels to Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Like they're both they're both grotesque images of wealth, the parent-child dynamic, being orphaned.
We have a cold open in this movie.
A literally cold open.
A literal cold open in which a baby eats a cat. That is some dark shit.
Well, that's it. I mean, immediately, Pee Wee Herman, people screaming, doctors dry heaving, a penguin in a box eating a cat. We're immediately in the world of horror. Yes. In a way that the first movie
and in the world of Tim Burton.
It's specifically horror, and the imagery is much more kind of mid-century Gothic than the original ever went. Like, the first thing you see, Cobblepot Manor is like Victorian Gothic. And all the imagery of the snow, the children's choir, the baby in the river. Well, and you
notice, like, they, when they are going to dump their baby into the stream or the river. It's not really a river, but they pass another couple who have a baby carriage. That baby carriage is white. Theirs is black.
Right.
So you have that sort of imagery going on. I mean,
one of the things that Tim Burton, I wouldn't say brought to Hollywood cinema, but he kind of revived in Hollywood cinema, because, film noir is based on this too, is German expressionist cinema. Your Fritz Langs, your Nosferatus, your G.W. Pabst, all the way through to like Metropolis, that kind of visual style, which is all based on stark contrast, black, white, shadow, light, is just so at play here. And it's something that characterizes Tim Burton's directorial style. But here, it's not hidden behind anything else. Like, it's got nothing else to compete with. It's just running riot.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And this cold open is the perfect example of that.
Encapsulation of that, right.
The Cobblepots, Paul Rubens is the Cobblepot patriarch. They're like Roald Dahl-esque variations on the Wayne family.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And at the same time, again, speaking to that, like, push and pull between the 1960s TV series version of Batman and the kind of comic book version of it, it's really striking that Oswald Cobblepot Sr., played by Paul Rubens, looks exactly like Burgess Meredith's Penguin.
Yeah, right.
So, and then, of course, when you see Danny DeVito for the first time, it's a reimagined Penguin look. And so that sense of, like, we're in familiar
They
Batman
even have
territory.
a moment where they stick the cigarette in the sort of the case holding in his mouth for him when they're asking him to be mayor, and he spits it out.
Yeah.
Right. It's really fun.
But it's never, and I think you're absolutely right in saying that this walks the line of between those two visions of Batman the best, because Penguin especially, and I'd say with Catwoman as well, feels new and familiar simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And I never knew much about Shrek, but I think that has less to do with whatever that character is in Batman and more to do with Christopher Walken, which I'm fine with.
Totally. Absolutely.
You put Christopher Walken in a movie, he's not beholden to anything but being Christopher Walken.
Yeah, you put Christopher Walken in a movie and give him a strange gray wig, I am on board.
And
great.
the other thing that really surprised me about this movie that I'd never clocked before, I don't know why, it's a Christmas movie.
Oh, I was just gonna, yeah.
It's one of the biggest Christmas movies ever.
I love that this movie is set at Christmas.
It really is
the
set at
imagery.
Christmas.
Yes, I love
there are
the
two
snow.
tree lighting ceremonies. Two.
Because the first one went so awry.
The second one didn't go great either, let's face it.
No, the second one was worse than the first one.
And there's a big Christmas party. There's mistletoe at the end. Alfred says, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Wayne." I mean, I don't know why no one talks about this. Like, why it's not on the list. I mean, it's bad enough that Die Hard 2: Die Harder isn't, like, considered along with Die Hard as a Christmas movie.
As much of a Christmas movie, right.
Why Batman Returns isn't, like, automatically in the Christmas movie canon, I have no fucking idea.
Right, like people should sit down and watch A Christmas Story and then Batman Returns.
Maybe, like you said, no one knew what to do with this movie. Maybe they should have sold it as a Christmas movie. Maybe it should have been called, like, Batman: Yuletide or something like that.
Can you imagine? Right. Well, and the thing is for some people, certainly at the time, people did not know what to do with this movie.
Yeah.
And I think now there are two camps, people that know what to do with the movie and people that have dismissed it from the first moment they saw it.
Yeah.
Do you think that this movie's better than the first Batman?
It's really difficult for me to say because I've seen the original Batman way more times. I had the VHS.
Right.
I wore down that VHS. I watched that movie to death. I did the same thing. I loved that movie so much on my first viewing, and obviously we talked about the numbers of that movie, so it was a massive hit. I myself have never been an enormous comic book person, so I don't come at it from the history of comic books. Me neither.
I know some people were very upset about his cowl and the cape and how things looked.
Fuck
and
him.
this isn't.
Fuck him.
Yeah, so fuck them all.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Me too.
I gotta tell you,
you throw that Superman logo.
yeah, right,
at
exactly.
none.
You go ahead and throw that logo. You go ahead and do the date rape kiss. But But
I think people know what we
I-
feel about that already.
yeah, exactly. For the longest time, I would not really entertain the idea of this movie being better than the first one because, like you, I'd seen it so many more times. I just loved that movie so much.
I think this
you
movie...
and I were talking privately, where you had said I can't,
We are?
or maybe I think I had said, all of a sudden out of nowhere, I was seeing all the Batmans were like playing in rotation on movie channels.
Yeah.
And let's do it. And just because I hadn't seen it in a long time, I watched it like a month and a half or 2 months ago,
Right,
or
me
however
too.
long it was.
Me too. I
And
watched it
was
within the
upon
past year. Yeah.
that viewing, and for our audience members, our special guest star for the 1982 singles episodes, Matthew Aldrich and I had been talking, and I remember years ago he had said, I think Batman Returns is the better movie, and I thought, you're fucking nuts.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And upon this viewing, I watched it, and I thought, oh, shit, I think this is a better movie.
You know what is also a factor is like, I'm partly a product of having seen Batman too many times and having not seen this enough. I feel like this movie has way more to offer me.
Yeah.
Upon subsequent viewings, I think that might be true regardless of that. I think this movie bears repeat viewings way more.
Yes.
But I also wanted to,
I think it's more interesting.
We've been talking both on and off mic about how the way that we've seen these movies in the past affects our feelings about them. I feel like I had the VHS of, like, the commercial VHS of Batman, so I can see the movie uninterrupted. I can watch it whenever I want. Batman Returns was seemingly, I only ever watched it on television, on like commercial television with commercials, with so many of my family around me that like 3 generations of chatty, like my grandma. There was one point I guarantee I watched Batman Returns with 3 generations of women in my family. Like my mother, my grandma, and my great grandma were in the room. I'm not getting the kind of tunnel vision I need to watch this movie.
The
commercial interruptions are one thing.
Perspiring from worry about
and
their thoughts and feelings.
So I'm having to deal with their reactions, them talking over everything, and I realized upon this viewing how much of this movie I didn't really understand.
Yeah, right.
But one of the things I didn't understand until this viewing was that, and this is partly Christopher Walken's performance to blame as much as anything. I'm using blame in I don't mean that pejoratively. When he goes, like, maybe it was like a commercial break, maybe it was, mother in one ear, great grandma in the other ear, but I genuinely thought when Shrek went into the sewers with Penguin hypnotized him, and then he was like doing Penguin's bidding for the rest of the movie, and that's not what happens at all.
No,
Shrek is using him as a political tool.
Yes, for his own means.
So I got to factor that in as a reason why. But there is.
How'd you think that? I mean, there's a great joke even when he's when he's twirling the umbrella and it's spinning in front of him, black and white.
Well, you can,
and he's looking at it as though he's hypnotized.
Well, it doesn't take
what's that supposed to hypnotize me? He goes, "No, just give you a splitting headache."
It doesn't take a genius to figure out that probably at that moment my grandma was telling me about someone she'd seen at the bakery. And all I'm seeing is the spinning thing. I'm going, oh, he's hypnotizing him.
Right. That's great.
But regardless of that, I mean, just to be, I don't particularly want to get into the things that don't work about the movie, but there is a kind of, I've talked about this before, a kind of muddiness at the level of script. Like, this movie is so good when it comes to character psychology Like, everyone's perspective, like, all the villains' perspectives and objectives are so clear.
So evident, right.
And sincere, believable, relatable, all those things. When it comes to, like, what's actually going on in the story, like who's allying with who's dead, who's not, who's half dead, who's a magic person, who's a scientific freak, like, it's very unclear. To me, that's like, the movie isn't really interested in that side of things, so it's phoning it in, which is fine because it compensates in other areas. But I can see how that would irritate people who are a little more literal minded about movies.
All right.
But for me, you know, again, Tim Burton was holding back so much of that imaginative side of his directorial personality in the original Batman movie.
In the first movie.
And he was putting it more into stylistic flourishes and touches. Here, it's everywhere. It's, like, pervasive in the movie. And I think you really have to tune into, you know, you really need to tune into the Beetlejuices and the Edward Scissorhands.
To understand, yeah.
And, you know, Nightmare Before Christmas worlds. To kind of, that's the better gateway for this than the original Batman, I think.
Sure. All right. Well, we're just getting started, ladies and gentlemen, so...
I haven't even talked about Catwoman yet.
No. We're going to get to that.
It's maybe the best thing in 90s cinema.
We get back. So, we're just getting started, ladies and gentlemen. We will be right back, and we will continue talking about Batman Returns right after this.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back. Tom and I are here discussing the 1992 film Batman Returns. You know, it just occurs to me, Tom, that's another thing about this movie. This movie's made in 1992. Because of Tim Burton, it feels timeless. It doesn't feel like a 90s movie. It doesn't feel, you know.
It only in the good historical sense of, you know, you can read so much of what was being reevaluated in society at the time with regards to gender and wealth, but so it might feel less timely if we'd done anything about those things,
right? Yeah, if we had an inkling of making the world a better place.
Because I had a moment in this movie where I realized that Batman Returns was the idealized version of the Trump narrative. Like, because at some point I was like, basically the platform that Oswald Cobblepot is running on as mayor is what Trump ran on as president, like drain the swamp. It's the same thing. And the same thing happened where, you know, there was a recording of him talking about committing criminal acts that was released publicly. With Bush, it was the Billy Bush tape.
Which did not matter, but in this movie,
right? That's it. So like in this version of the story, that ends Penguin's political career.
Yeah.
Trump, it's not even a stumbling block. So I'm like, it's like we're the dystopia. Gotham City is like the utopia
Yeah, exactly.
to our reality. And there was so many moments where, I thought, and all the time I'm thinking, when it comes to Catwoman, who,
Well, I was just gonna
we
say,
could spend like a
yeah.
whole podcast on. I'm thinking, it's like I cannot literally think of a more interesting feminist character since in Hollywood cinema, and I can only think of worse versions of this, including Catwomen.
Yes, right. I was just gonna say, including all the Catwomen that have preceded this Catwoman.
And then I was, I was like, I was thinking, it's like, well, everyone talks about how gender progressive the Avengers movies are, and I've not seen all of them, but it's like, I think there's too many of those movies where those women are working unchecked as men's secretaries.
Right.
Anyway, but that's for another podcast.
That's for another podcast. I agree.
But I just couldn't believe how out of the gate, it's so overstated in Hollywood cinema. Anytime you get any female character who's got an inkling of badassery or hits a man in the face, that she's a more empowered character and a more kind of gender liberated character. She's a female activist, like a feminist activist. That's all real in this movie. Like, this is one of the only certainly 90s movies, one of the only Hollywood movies I can think of where all that bullshit that people say they're doing to help women in Hollywood movies that doesn't really happen on screen happens on screen.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
from the
you're
beginning.
introduced to this character who, the moment she just says, I have an idea,
Yep.
she is presented with the looks of men that makes her change I have an idea to I have a question to being murdered.
I mean, there was so much in there that I enjoyed, like the fact that as soon as she's introduced, she's taking on institutionalized sexism of corporations and government. Like, from the moment gender politics comes into this movie, everything it's saying is on point.
Yes.
And even the fact, I tell you, the level of subtlety here that most movies wouldn't even dream of putting in.
That's the thing. There's so much subtlety on all these levels about the duality, about the gender.
Yeah.
But, anyway, go ahead. But I
when she
marvel
leaves-
about that with this movie. That's what I think is the lasting legacy of this
Yeah.
movie, that it does so fucking good.
Yeah, and hasn't really been done better since in this genre of formula. She leaves the meeting and she immediately blames herself. I mean, that touch of, like, it's not just that this sexism exists, it's the fact that the patriarchy makes women blame themselves.
Right.
Like, turn themselves into the culprits. And like later on in the movie, and again, like another moment where she has this moment where she brutalizes a rapist, which, we've seen that in rape revenge movies before. Like, that's not a new thing. The new touch is then she turns on the victim,
woman. Yes.
And says, you're part of the problem too. And I'm like, not that I in any way agree with that, but the movie is intelligent enough to complicate this, like femininity and feminism is not as straightforward as Hollywood movies let us know. The fact that this movie is actually alluding to the fact that women blame themselves for the awful things that happen to them, and also for the fact they blame each other for the terrible things that happen to each other. And it picks up on both those things, and I am just like, I'm chef's kissing everything.
Right, exactly. There's so many moments in this movie where I'm going, fucking great.
But it was just, but then I thought about it in genre terms as well, like the 80s movie trope of the kind of the woman in the workplace comedy, which is where her story starts, like the baby boom working girl kind of movie.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like a woman trying to rise up in the workplace against, big corporations and male executives.
And just maleness, the gender politics of trying to move upwards in a male world.
And then they put that in like a comic book superhero frame, and it twists that genre, but it's also recognizably in that genre too. I just think it's magnificent.
Well, not only
this,
that,
notice
but
this
like...
has nothing to do with Batman.
No, yeah, exactly.
And
right.
that's fine.
But I'm fine. I'm totally okay with that. And I also, one of the things I really appreciate about this movie is even when this movie it's showing us all of that, but even when it's showing shitty men with shitty behavior, it can still do it in a way that actually is entertaining or makes me laugh. This moment where she shows back up to Shrek's office after he thinks he's murdered her is fucking amazing, where he's leading her in the conversation about, did you fall on that ski trip you had? And
it made me regret that they didn't do more movies together, because every time Christopher Walken and Michelle Pfeiffer are on screen together, they look like they're having so much fun.
And then you have this moment afterwards where he said, who'd have thought Selena would have had a brain to damage? Bottom line, she tries to blackmail me. I'll throw her out a higher window. But for now, I got bigger fish to fry. I mean, that's legitimately funny.
But what's also, it's not, I mean, it is. Like,
but it's shitty behavior.
Yeah.
That is legitimately funny.
But we also know where all these villains are coming from, and that is so important.
Right.
We know, and again, when a movie like this comes along that does things like this so effortlessly, you wonder why every movie can't do it, and they just never do.
They never do.
But this idea...
But that's also, speaking to your love of the third one, that's what pisses me off about the second and third movie.
Yeah.
Is those movies are just devoid of any of what we're talking about right now.
That's certainly true. And you can go back and forth on which of those is the worst culprit for that. But,
sure.
And we will. But, I wanted to bring you, if you ask me now, it's like, what is Shrek's objective? What is Penguin's objective? Well, Penguin wants to find his dad. Wants to find out where he's from.
Does he, though?
Well, no, I mean, that is like...
That's more of a ruse, isn't it?
Not for a big portion of the movie, and that's what I love that the cold open.
That's
makes
what he's
very
presenting
clear
to the public. That's he's kind of like the
but
mayor
I think
of Nightmare on Elm Street
up to a point until he finds out that his parents were a piece of shit. He remembers his parents were a piece of shit, and then Shrek throws in the whole mayoral thing, and that fucks everything up. And Shrek, it's so clear that Christopher Walken is his evil plan is just to get his son a trust fund.
Yes.
But rather than it being because he's like a twisted version of Thomas Wayne, basically. Because he's trying to pass all this...
let's speak to, because you've mentioned it several times, the politics of this movie. Yeah. The idea of this power plant, to me, is fascinating.
I love the fact that the power plant...
Because we have just left Ronald Reagan's America.
Yeah.
In 1992.
Yeah.
And we are at the end of the first Bush term. We've elected a new president, but this is still...
Is that the name of the new Rambo movie, First Bush? Last Blood, First Bush.
Yeah. But at any rate, I think it's fascinating that Max Shrek's want is still steeped in what we have come to know about corporate America.
Yeah. And
it's great.
But this movie is kind of connecting the dots between toxic masculinity and millionaire wealth.
Yes.
Without letting Bruce Wayne off the hook.
Yeah.
But in a way I actually think is more interesting than the way... because one of the things that's really fascinating about the Nolan trilogy is it sets up this idea about we're going to, Christian Bale is going to play Bruce Wayne as a rich jerk because it's a good beard.
Cover, yeah.
It's a good cover story. But that's all it is in there. Here I feel like what they do with Penguin and like the way that they make it abundantly clear that these guys mirror what Bruce Wayne is, that this is exactly who Bruce Wayne could have been if something had fallen one way or the other.
One way or the other.
Is much more interesting to me.
Well, and he has to wrestle with that part of himself of how much of them is he.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's not done in the original movie because
right.
you know, we learn that one of the kind of, again, something that really pissed the fans off was they made Jack Napier the killer of Bruce Wayne's
his parents.
So they had a kind of the Joker and Batman have a codependence that they didn't necessarily have.
Which for a movie, by the way, is great.
Like, brilliant.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But here, I mean, not only is it like, you know,
different mediums.
It just kind of, it's able to sort of, yeah, this movie is able to move between the personal and the political in a way that I've certainly not seen another superhero action movie do.
Oh, yeah. And they can do it with just a few lines. Just, you know, the manner in which they address these things can at times be so slight but mean so much. You know,
it's it's
walking
not
him to the elevator and saying, "You don't seem like the kind of man who would do business with Max Schreck," and he says, "You don't seem like the kind of woman who would work for a man like that." That says so much about both the people as characters.
Definitely,
but that's all that's said in that moment. That's it. You know.
And there's a great moment as well. For some reason, it always stands out for me. When first of all, you know, it's Catwoman smashing up a museum. You know, smashing up these kind of
not a museum, it's a department store.
Sorry, the department store. Like a department store. Like everything that objectifies women, she's literally destroying. Right. Which is like, I mean, she is a gender activist. Let's face it. In that moment, she's not the, you know, lady bank robber of later incarnations.
And she is confronted by two security guards who say, "I don't know whether to cuff her or fall in love with her," or something like that.
Yeah, you know? and then one of them says, "Our take home is only 15, you know, it's like $1,500.
$300 a week or something.
And I just remarked to myself, it's like, there is a lot of like gender, like in this whole scene, gender is at play, the economy is at play.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't think of another movie of this kind that is so rich and dense with this meaning, and yet effortless and seamless in how it integrates it.
Okay, so you know, you are just speaking the words that I love, because what you're talking about right now was my biggest takeaway in watching this movie twice in the last couple of months, or last month, and you know, to this movie's credit, I think it's incredible what it does.
Yeah. And we've not even mentioned something that really struck me this time, and I don't know why it hasn't before. Probably because it's a debate that we're having so much now that your brain is pre-programmed to think about it. From a very early point in this movie, the media is to blame for a lot of the evils of the fictional universe.
Yeah.
Like, one of the first things that Alfred says is basically, "Can't trust the media." Mm-hmm. It's like, that's what we've spent the last 4 years talking about.
Right.
And for everything from the kind of media-managed mayoral campaign to, like, Penguin's radio play in the sewers that he does to pretend that he's, like, a hero.
He's a hero.
I mean, you know, talk about being eerily
like you
prescient.
said earlier, to your point earlier, his getting caught on tape.
Right. He stage manages a terrorist attack. I mean, you can't get more prescient than that in terms of what happened this very year in America.
Yeah.
And I'm just blown away by how insightful, you know, it's also deeply depressing because you realize all these things are just as common then as they were now, and we've done zero about it.
And we've done zero about it. There's, speaking to this, going back to a little bit more to the gender politics, but it's connected to the regular politics. When he's trying to convince Cobblepot to become mayor,
Yeah.
do you remember what the final selling point was for him?
No.
Shrek says, unlimited poontang.
Yes. Everything comes back to, like, sexual avarice.
Fucking
Yeah.
shit. This is like...
Well, this is also the scene where
It's
Penguin
such an
says...
adult movie, but, he says unlimited poontang, and his response is, okay, I'll be mayor.
He also says, I'll teach her my French flipper trick.
Flipper trick, right. To Jan Hooks.
It's, yeah, because, like, basically the men in these movies, it's no surprise that we have, like, 80s, 90s movies where the men are as horny as hell, but this movie turns their objectification of women back on them through the vehicle of Catwoman.
Yes.
That is a big, big difference. Not only is their horniness seen as toxic masculinity, not just, like, normal guy behavior. First of all, that's a big leap already. But the fact is, like, they are punished and meet violence every time that they enact.
You're right, exactly right.
These behaviors and characteristics is just insane. I really can't get over just how it hits the nail on the head. With every interaction, like the broader political picture of what's happening. Like even movies that are about this stuff. Like
don't
even
do it as well. Exactly. Where
movies
it's the
that are about
central
gender
point.
don't get this right.
Exactly. Right.
And ostensibly, this movie's not about that. It's like about, in the words of Jack Nicholson, a flying mouse.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
But it's not about that at all. It's insane. but and also, again, to go to that, like, it's not as straightforward as, we're just like castration, of any male sexual heteronormative behavior.
Sure.
Like the fact that Catwoman participates in that culture by making her power so explicitly sexual, the dominatrix thing, which is sort of has always been in the Catwoman image, but here is going full force, full bondage, full S&M, full dominatrix.
She literally goes from hello there to hell here.
Yeah.
As represented by the neon sign on her wall, where she smashes out 2 letters.
Which is a quotation from the novel of Moonraker by Ian Fleming. But anyway.
46 minutes, everybody.
But it's, the fact that she participates in that too is just like an extra layer. And just the overall kinkiness of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Even the penguins have leather vests.
Right.
But because Tim Burton puts this kind of fairy tale gloss on everything, the most like adult things in the movie, he's able to walk back as being cute and innocent, like the poodle with the grenade.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's always that interplay, and in Tim Burton's best movies, that's absolutely there. It's like the most taboo human behavior is shown, but shown as something that's so kind of charming and innocent at the same time. And he gets that duality just right, I think.
Just right at every moment. Absolutely.
And usually with real animals involved. Which is, again, if I was going to say, it's like, what is not time, devil's advocate, what's not timely about this movie? The amount of real fucking animals in the movie does not feel like something you would do in a modern blockbuster.
Yeah, right.
But apparently, like, that was Tim Burton's big anxiety all the time, was that the penguins didn't get hurt. I mean,
oh, okay. I
it
didn't
was
read
also
that.
his decision to put rocket launchers on them.
On
but,
top of their backs. Yeah, exactly.
So I'd say the Penguins wouldn't get hurt if you didn't do that. But he was like, the people on set said that I remember reading this in a book about Tim Burton once, that like he was sewed every time there was a penguin. He was just like, is it okay? Just check again that it's okay. Check the penguin's okay.
That is really endearing and sweet.
Yeah, except for the fact that no one said you had to put real penguins in your movie.
All right, let's take another break, and then we'll come back and we will finish out Batman Returns right after this. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we are back yet again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing, of course, Batman Returns, the 1992 film. Well, I mean, we were talking about Michelle Pfeiffer, but we kind of just talked around the gender politics of it. The performance itself
Astonishing.
is Oscar-worthy, I think. I'd have to look up who was being nominated in 1992, but...
And she wasn't the original choice. It was Annette Bening, right?
No, it was Annette Bening, yeah.
Which...
And the only... she had gotten pregnant.
That's right, yeah. It's just a masterful performance. I mean, I can't remember. In addition to everything else that we've talked about, that she executes perfectly, and that's the key to this movie, is that everything that is in the script that's bringing these characters to life, the actors are all working towards the same goal. But but you know, just as a kind of bonus for that, Michelle Pfeiffer is hilarious in this movie.
Oh yeah.
They basically give her, like, for a large portion of the movie, she's like the snarky narrator.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe based on her other roles, I was like, I don't know if she can pull that off. Like, I don't think of her that way. She pulls it all off.
Oh yeah. There's nothing she doesn't pull off in this movie.
No, but I mean, I think in a weird way, that's like the hardest thing for me, for her just to be like commenting on everyone else's behavior in a snarky way. Because she does that throughout like a lot of the movie, and I'm just like, wow, she is very funny. And then she's asked to do like broadly comic things, like when she goes back into her apartment and repeats the same coming home routine that she was as Selena. I'm like, this is, you know, like in a different actor's hands, this scene falls totally flat.
Yeah, right. Could have been a disaster.
And she's funny enough, but also gothic enough in the way that, melodramatic enough in the way that she plays it, that you're laughing and you're also thinking, boy, this is fucked up.
Right.
And she smashes her answering machine, which, you know, there's a comment about putting the, you know, trashing what the harm that the 80s did to us in a visual done better. I don't know what that is, than smashing an answering machine. Yeah, I think she's absolutely magnificent, and also, you know, the fact that, I mean, one of the things that is interesting to me, and I don't dislike it, but it is anomalous from the rest of the movies, is that she's the only magic character. The only...
Yeah.
Like, there is no scientific explanation for why she becomes Catwoman.
No.
She's brought back from the dead by being pecked a bit by cats.
Yeah, I was gonna say by being licked and nibbled on by kitties.
And going back to the snarky narrator thing, I thought that 9 lives was just like a joke.
Right.
But like by the end of the movie, I'm like,
it's literal.
No, I think she really does have 9 lives. I mean,
She's
as much as we
counting
can
them
tell,
down. Yeah.
because this is magic. But when you think about, like, however ridiculous it becomes, it always errs on the side of science fiction. This is the only legitimately magic character.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I have a problem with that at all, but it did kind of stand out to me. It's like, in order to get from A to B. But I think what kind of makes it okay, I mean, obviously being a Tim Burton movie helps.
Sure.
And him being on the fantasy side of things helps. But also the fact that, like, the character development and change is so clear that that's kind of really all that matters. And
right, exactly.
This is just a workaround for that.
Sure.
In fact, I almost don't think you need the scene of the cat pecking her at all. I think she should just turn up as Catwoman and be like, nope, didn't die.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
But you can imagine. I mean, you can imagine if, even though she Indiana Jones styles kind of falls through the awnings.
Yeah.
Which, to whatever extent broke her fall, she does hit the ground. So you imagine if you don't have the kitty cat scene, you just see her on the ground, and all of a sudden she shows up in the office. People,
But no one else.
You need that bridge.
Yeah. I mean, that there is, again, that's the thing that sort of irritates fans is when they break out, because the Batman universe is more fourth wall than any of the other superhero mythologies. It's all about Batman can do this in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit weird. Again, like, it speaks to, again, why I don't think the focus here is on making a superhero movie and making a Batman movie, and the magic just kind of absolves all sins basically at this point.
Well, and there's a lot of sinning in this movie. That I've always found that interesting about Tim Burton's vision of Batman. Batman's killing a lot of fucking people in these movies. He throws dynamite down a guy's pants and throws him into into the sewer.
Absolutely.
That guy fucking dies terribly.
Yeah, I think this movie, more than any, even the Nolan ones, is more unapologetic about Batman's moral
absolutely.
Ambiguity.
Yeah.
But I think they're leaning into that.
I find both of the the one thing I really like about Nolan, like the rules that Batman sets up for himself, make that character compelling throughout those movies.
Mm-hmm.
But I likewise think the choices that Bruce Wayne / Batman make in this movie in regards to taking lives in this movie make him just as interesting.
Yeah.
On the other side of the spectrum.
I suppose we're getting to the end of the podcast. We should probably talk about Michael Keaton.
Why not?
Who plays Batman in this movie.
Yes. By the way, my definitive Batman.
Oh, you'll get aside from Adam West, yes. But I was gonna pull you up earlier on in the podcast on like a very minor point, which is that you said, and I have said too, we don't mind that Batman is marginalized to some extent in the movie because the movie is still it's still
just too cohesive to not.
Yeah, and it what it does is it puts Bruce. It still characterizes Bruce Wayne, but it doesn't use Bruce Wayne to do it.
Right.
That said, I mean, no one at the time knew that this was going to be Keaton's last Batman movie, and that there were moments where I was like, it's sad that it's the last time he's doing this.
Yeah.
And that he's cut out of a lot of the movie and all that sort of stuff. But then the flip side of that is that Keaton is character actor par excellence. so you will never get a bad moment from him.
Right.
So there's like, even if he's doing really inauspicious things in this movie, there is no big Batman moment.
Right.
Even in like the cataclysmic moments of the movie, it's really Catwoman who's taking the agency. But so, you know, every little thing he has to do, he executes so well. And I just love...
That's the thing, is I think what he does in this movie, he does so well that Batman looms larger in your mind than he is actually in the movie. And that's part of the magic of this movie. That's one of the things that I think makes this movie work as well as it does.
Yeah, the kind of scarecrow-like fog.
Yeah.
That deludes you into thinking that he's in this movie a lot more than he is. But I mean, subsequently, you know, when he was replaced by Kilmer and then replaced by Clooney, you know, you sort of see, you think, oh, this is written in a way that Keaton could do this better. Like, again and again and again. But we'll talk about that when we talk about that. But I just thought there was moments here where the subsequent movies, like, they aim harder for a kind of DC universe totality, like references to Superman and that kind of thing. But what I liked here is, like, and you know, Tim Burton's always wanted to make a Superman movie. He got very far into doing that before
almost happened.
Apart. Yeah. I love the fact here that, like, his Bruce Wayne is pure Clark Kent.
Yes.
Unapologetically, and he is exactly the person. He's both the best Bruce Wayne and the best Clark Kent out there.
Yeah.
The scene with him, like, awkwardly flirting with Selena Kyle and all his, like, malapropisms as he speaks.
Right.
I mean, it's great. And I'm just like, you know, and I thought, because I remember when Christian Bale came out of the gate and he was sort of doing a version of Patrick Bateman for his Bruce Wayne, I thought, that is great. That is exactly what Bruce Wayne is, and no one's ever done it before. Clooney did it a little bit, but I don't know if they knew how much of a jerk he was, or it was just written badly. But I love the fact that Keaton goes exactly the opposite tract and plays it as this kind of bumbling alter ego.
Love it. I really love that about his Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And speaking again to the duality, the moment where he's on a date with Selena Kyle, and then you have their duality together.
Yeah.
Where they're both trying to explain to Alfred why they can't see each other right now. And he's like, tell her I had a big business meeting. No, tell her I had, tell her I will relay the message, sir. And then she does the same exact thing.
I think this movie's pretty lucky in that, I mean, it's lucky to have had Michael Gough, and he seems to work as well with any of the Batmans as, you know, it's all equal because Michael Gough is carrying them in all the scenes. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't really matter. But what's genuinely great here is the interplay between them, which is actually not, again, it's not particularly crucial to the movie in any kind of plot or character sense. You know, it's like the scene with the Vichyssoise.
Yeah, I know. I'm nowhere.
Desperately trying to figure out why this moment would be included, and I'm like, because these two actors are good. Right. That's a good moment for them. That's it.
That is it.
There's no McGregor complex or Peter Rabbit syndrome. Right. None of that.
It's cold. It's supposed to be cold, sir. It's Vichyssoise.
And then, you know, and I think this movie actually benefits from Gremlins 2 having come out a couple of years before. There's one of my favorite Michael Keaton moments in the movie is where he calls Alfred out for bringing Vicky Vale into the Batcave, which is like the jump the shark moment of the original Batman. And like Gremlins 2, you know, we're giving our first movie logic notes.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And he says, you talk about security, I just turn around and Vicky Vale's in the Batcave.
I'm just sitting there working, and all of a sudden Vicky Vale's in the Batcave. What the fuck?
And, you know, that also, to me, spoke to another great scene.
Vic.
Another great scene in this movie, which is where Batman and Bruce Wayne and Selina sat by the fire in Wayne Manor, and they basically talk about the cliches of their characterizations.
Yes.
And I just love that, and I think like that ability to see sequels and franchises for like what they are.
You're right. Yeah.
Is really helpful here, but it's just one of the many. The self-referentiality of this movie is just at the right pitch.
I was just
not
gonna
too
say.
Forced,
Right?
And not compromising the organic stuff.
Yeah.
In this movie, which is brilliant. I mean, we haven't talked much. I mean, Danny DeVito's performance is
okay. So I was just gonna say that we've given some light to Catwoman. We've given some light to Batman.
God.
Can we talk about Danny DeVito as the Penguin?
I mean, I love.
Because he's like full Danny DeVito. This is what I equate it between the second and the third movies because
full Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito is
such
able
a hilarious idea.
Full Danny DeVito, but with the mind of the character of Penguin first.
He's so committed to that character.
Is full Jim Carrey with the idea of full Jim Carrey before the Riddler, and that's why the Penguin works so much better than the Riddler in the third movie.
You never lose sight of the Penguin as a character. You never lose sight of the Burgess Meredith incarnation of the character, which is the most definitive Batman.
He was
villain
originally,
up to
by
that
the way,
point.
he was going to be his father, but he was so old and sick at the time. He couldn't do it.
It wasn't that Tim Burton said, "No, we need a Tim Burton thing. Get in Pee Wee Herman."
Yeah, no, it was not that.
Pee Wee's Adventure was my first movie. Fuck him.
And I think for I don't think his performance is broad at all. But
no. You know what it is? It's physically committed.
Yes.
To an extreme.
Yes.
That it needs. Like the scenes of him devouring fish.
Yeah, I know.
You cannot fake that.
No.
He is devouring raw fish. And it's not even like there's no sense of like the actor is grossed out by this.
No.
Because when people do that in movies,
there are guttural sounds of enjoyment.
He's going
yes.
The whole time.
It's great. But those are the moments where again, I think it's completely grounded.
Me too. It is.
But because
especially
it is.
the way it's written.
Absolutely. But it's full Danny DeVito mode and full Penguin mode, right?
Yeah.
My favorite moment for him is when he and Batman meet on a dark corner right before they both are introduced to Catwoman.
Right.
And Batman says, "Enjoying your handiwork?" And he just says, a concerned citizen out, checking what's going on, mayor stuff. You're not the mayor. And then there's this moment where he kind of leans in to Batman and says, "You don't think you're gonna win, do you?" It's so fucking great.
Yeah.
Oh, I fucking love it.
It is not. You're right to make the kind of Jim Carrey contrast because, again, they try and pull the same shtick of like it's an over the top character, not an over the top performance. No, it's an over the top performance.
Yeah.
It's
outdone by another out.
Right?
Yeah. But we'll get there.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, the script is really helping here because we've taken this character from childhood. We've been with him like longer than anyone else. And we've seen him trying to do something genuine, which is find his family, find his roots, where he's from, all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. We've seen him kind of foist into a mayoral campaign that he didn't want to be part of. And while I don't think that storyline particularly goes anywhere except to kind of become like a being there.
All it does is get in the way of his uber evil plan of getting all the firstborn children.
But
that's ignored for a while so that he could do.
Yeah.
But
But taking that slight, like, it's not. He's not established as the villain in the same way Catwoman isn't established as the villain, or even Shrek. I think it's like you know what they want and you know who they are, and they're genuinely multidimensional. And
yes.
But the thing is that, I mean, all that means nothing, because you could say that about Mr. Freeze too. But it's about the
execution,
backstory wise, yeah.
Right.
The actors are executing absolutely all of that.
Yes.
And
and that's the thing. You and I talked off mic. One of the things I said to you is, one of the things I marvel at that this movie does so well, but to the detriment of every single superhero movie that came after it, was the number of villains. We have 3 villains in this movie. Two that we know really well. And it's kind of like, if you look at the IMDb notes on any superhero movie, it will tell you they wanted to do this, but they couldn't fit it in, so they saw it in 3 or saw it in 4. IMDb trivia is littered with those kinds of stories.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is literally the only superhero movie that has more than one villain that works really well.
And again, I think it comes down to emphasis for me, because
it feels like a magic trick they did it so well.
Well,
when you see other movies,
because I think where the script gets a little muddy is in, like, who's allied with who, what the dynamic's supposed to be, why that dynamic changes. All those things happen in Batman Forever, and all those things on paper happen here. But you are just not focused on that element of it to the point where it just almost passes you by. Like, it's almost like
just done better in this movie.
Well,
period.
I think, but it's like a kind of perform. This is a very on message analogy. It's like a performing dog trick. It's almost like there are scenes in this movie where it's like, okay, we need all the villains in one shot to do a moment for the trailer. We've done the moment for the trailer. Let's get on with the movie. Like, It's like the movie stops to do the big trailer moment, and at the end of the big trailer moment, you're like, but I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
Yeah,
like, it looks good. The Penguin flying off on the umbrella. Catwoman's there. Batman's there. They're looking at him. Doesn't move the story on, or doesn't tell us anything about the characters. So it's like, yeah, it's a superhero movie. They want that big trailer moment, but that's like, then they get back to doing the good stuff, which is often them I think the movie is strongest when they're all acting separately and not feigning some kind of alliance that doesn't really make any narrative sense.
I don't know. You know, I'm perfectly willing to buy into the 2 biggest baddies in Gotham joining forces to try to get rid of Batman. That makes sense to me.
It feels to me, it feels nailed on to me, but it just portrays where the interest of this movie lies, which is not to do the finer points of the framework they've got, but to take the framework to do something infinitely more interesting with the characters, with the idea of, I mean, it's a psychological deconstruction of superheroism to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at one point in the movie, they say, you know, I'm tired of wearing these masks.
Well, this
and once
is
again, I think this idea
yeah.
of like, this idea, I love this idea, and I think it's done better than in the Nolan trilogy, like Batman not wanting to be Batman. I love this idea that he's kind of carrying this around, like, deep-seated all the time, as opposed to, I'm retiring from being Batman like 3 times a movie, which is what happens in the Nolan movies. And it's like, I love the fact that that's always there with Keaton's performance, but it's not made a big deal of until they sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
Which is exactly when it would come out. It's like, I got to play all these roles.
My favorite moment...
I lose women because of it.
Yeah, right, exactly. My favorite moment in any Batman movies, in any series involving Batman, is when they go to the Masquerade Ball You can see everybody is wearing a mask, except the two people whose masks are their regular faces during the day.
Yes.
Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. And they're dancing together. Meanwhile, like the red mask of death, the Red Death, like Phantom of the Opera, is on the stairs behind them.
Yeah.
And this moment with this great fucking song, Face to Face.
By Susie and the Banshees.
Susie and the Banshees, playing in the background is fucking amazing. And
following an instrumental of Super Freak. Let's not forget that.
But this moment where they discover who they are.
Yeah. And it's
and
not
he pulls
not
her
obvious.
in closer, and she says, "What happens now? Do we have to fight?"
Yeah.
It's fucking great. It's so good.
There's and I would
with
take
everything that's going on around them, with everybody's wearing a mask at that ball, and they're the only two people not,
two things
Tim
about
Burton has given nothing but thought to every single frame he is putting in this movie.
we haven't talked much about the I think the production design in this movie is as flawless as it gets.
Yes.
There is more there is more intricate production design in the artwork for Oswald Cobblepot's mayoral campaign than there are in the entire production design for most movies.
Yes.
More thought has been put into that logo for his mayoral campaign than goes in like most 2-hour movies. That scene is extraordinary. What I love about it, in contrast to what Joel Schumacher does, is it's not obvious what we're trying to say here. You just laid it out verbally. It's done well.
Yes.
It's not just about saying it. It's about executing it properly.
Right.
And Tim Burton, he understands that, and his detailed eye when it comes to production is where that really helps him here. But also, I'd take that scene over the fake diner scene from Heat in Dark Knight any day.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's more interesting to me. Apart from the fact that it's a man and a woman and not just two men, that helps. But
it's half as long too. Get to its point quicker.
Oh, for fucking sure.
But I say that as a fan of that scene in Heat. I do like that scene.
A fan of that scene in Heat, and a fan of that scene, and a fan of that Dark Knight movie too. But
sure.
To me, there's just no comparison.
Agreed.
And it's not hitting you over the head with it.
There's only one thing that really infuriates me about this movie.
The action movie one-liners.
No, I'm okay with that.
High fiber, eat floor.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Come on,
they should have. They should have got an action movie one-liner script doctor in.
I was just gonna say a script doctor to punch up the battle jokes.
But that was just placeholder dialogue. Anyway, what infuriates you?
Okay, you got this final scene. Everybody's together. Penguin's there. Penguin's already fallen into the deep, but he hasn't re-risen yet. Mm-hmm. Max Schreck is there. You've got Selina Kyle as Catwoman, and Batman's there. You're going to laugh at this because it seems like such a minor, stupid thing, but it just infuriates me that clearly he has got dark makeup on around his eyes.
Batman?
Whenever he's Batman. And when he tears his mask off, you can clearly see it's not there anymore. So we go from he's got makeup on to he's wearing the mask and doesn't, and tears the mask off. And it's only so that it doesn't look weird when he tears his mask off. It drives me nuts.
I guarantee
every
you, Tim
time
Burton.
I see it.
I guarantee you, Tim Burton was pushing for
the makeup,
Bruce Wayne eyeliner, and the studio said no, he can't be a transvestite. Have you ever known Tim Burton not to put black eyeliner on someone?
That's what I'm saying. Like, how did he miss that? It just drives me up the wall. But other than that, this whole last scene is fucking great. Like you said, the magic of Selina Kyle, she's getting shot. I love that Max Schreck looks at fucking Bruce. He says, "Bruce Wayne, why are you dressed up like Batman?" He is Batman, you idiot. fucking great.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's maybe one too many resurrections in that scene, but I think it diminishes their threat a little bit for them to all so easily return to life. But I think that's maybe a larger question in terms of like a realism question that I have, and it's not particular to this movie, but it comes up in all of these movies. Why does Bruce Wayne use the Batman voice when it's just Alfred? Or to anyone who already knows he's Batman. Bruce Wayne is Batman.
I couldn't say.
It's a bizarre convention that I've never
Force
understood.
of habit.
It's worse in it was worse in the Nolan ones, but
Right.
it's pretty bad here. What do you think? Because this movie ends on a kind of has a weird non-ending, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the Batman Catwoman relationship, what did you think of that?
I could tell you that I remember my feeling even on the very first viewing in the theater was that seeing Catwoman's silhouette against the moon with the snow felt like an afterthought.
Definitely.
And I could tell you for a fact that it was.
Yeah.
It's not even her. It's not Michelle Pfeiffer. It was an afterthought. They decided to do it after in case she came back in another movie, and it cost them $250,000 just to get that one shot somehow. Remarkably, I don't know how you spend $250,000 on. But it also took Chris O'Donnell 4 hours to get into his Robin costume, which I also don't understand. I guess there's just things about Hollywood I don't understand. But
right.
But it feels like an afterthought, and it is an afterthought. I like the moment between him and Alfred, though. You know?
Well,
Merry Christmas, sir. Merry Christmas to you, Alfred, and goodwill towards men.
I don't need to mention James Bond at this point because I've already done my reference. I think.
Of course.
But what I like about this is the sort of franchise continuity element of it. Always ends with Alfred in the limo.
Right.
Which
He's
is
always driving someone.
So I like the fact they're still keeping in mind, it's like, oh, it might be nice if these movies kind of all end the same way, regardless of what's in them.
Yeah.
But I like the big differences, the fact that, you know, they tease the continuation of their relationship, but it's not, you know, in the previous movie.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
It's not about, but also, I mean, for the gender politics of the movie, if you think about Batman, it's like, is Batman going to get the girl is the big question. And here, it's not even an issue. It's just like, is their relationship going to continue or not? Doesn't really define of like, is he going to get the sexy hot girl?
Yeah, but I don't equate it to getting the hot sexy girl. I mean, because
no, that's what I'm saying. It's not that here.
Right.
It's like
in the scene before that, I mean, he rips off his mask to say, "We're the same, you and me. Just walk away."
I really miss that soft rubber quality that the Tim Burton Batman costume has. Sorely lacking in later movies,
I'll say.
And also very much more bondage oriented. It's I mean, again, it's like they're a victim of circumstances here. That afterthought shot probably would have been a better button on the movie if Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton were both going to come back, which they don't, and neither of them be seen again.
And that's probably part of it, right?
So it's it's like, well, you know, no one knows that this is the end of the road for both of them, and so it kind of. But I like the fact that they're thinking about, you know, Alfred in the limo is a nice.
No, I agree. I really like that.
But I mean, you know, to me, the real ending of the movie, because this movie, as far as I'm concerned, is his biography, pretty much, his Penguin's water burial.
Right.
I mean, it's beautiful. I mean,
it's great.
That's the big payoff scene for the movie, not the action scene that precedes it, but
and also sort of his, right before that, his resurrection from the water. Bile dripping from his mouth, bleeding.
There was one too many of those. But
I like that body horror. Plus, you have the great joke of, Batman's back is turned to him and he pulls an umbrella. Batman turns around and goes, "Oh, I grabbed the cute one," and then falls over dead. It's fucking great. I think that's a great joke.
It's a great joke, of course. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to go for a Bond hat trick, but also the countdown voice, the German poodle lady's countdown voice.
Right.
Which to me specifically is like a specific reference to, I think, Dr. No, where there's this very obviously German countdown voice.
Right.
But again, what I kind of think, like those sequences, it's not that Burton's not interested in them, because you don't execute something in such detail when you're not interested in it.
Sure.
But he wants to change the emphasis, and I love how the kind of slickness and coolness of the action is undercut by basically animals. Duck and penguin noises on the radar, the poodle getting the batamarang, the poodle getting the grenade, the German poodle lady. It's like, it's again, I love the fact it's like when you're making a very adult movie, a very kinky movie, but because you have kids and animals in this movie, you've always have this deniability that it's like, yeah, it's just like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, or it's a family friendly movie. It's like,
you even have one of the first appearances by Doug Jones, who will become Oscar worthy performances of animals in later movies.
Yeah. And I liked how old fashioned all the kind of circus imagery was, and that it was real animals, and that it felt like a different time of filmmaking when the emphasis. I mean, we're coming out of the practical era a little bit,
but barely,
yeah. But certainly Burton is doing everything
as practical as he can.
Yeah. And to go back right to the beginning, I cannot. My jaw dropped when I saw the model shot of Gotham City at the beginning of this movie. When it says 33 years later, I was like, I don't think it looked this good before. I don't think it's going to look as good since.
We haven't talked about it, but this is my favorite incarnation of Gotham City, is this movie.
And it's basically the Metropolis from the movie Metropolis from the 1920s.
Totally.
I'm fine with that.
And I'm totally
and
good.
But that's the thing about like internal
logic.
It's
very Weimar Republic.
Yes, it is. But it's just like, it's so consistent. Like I think the problem with subsequent Gotham cities, even I think to an extent in the Nolans as well, is like, the identity of the city keeps changing architecturally, stylistically, all those things. This, even a little bit in the first Batman, this one, like, it's just mid-century America.
Yeah.
Like, but it looks like 1920s Germany.
Yes, right.
And that is basically it. And it's perfect, and its identity never changes. Like, the city is, that cliche of the city is a character, but it's a plausible character.
Yes.
Abandoned if City is a character movies. In the next movie, it's got a lot of fucking issue. It needs to take some schizophrenia medication.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like, Nolan's was like, Gotham City could just be Chicago. Let's just do that.
And then we filmed too much in Chicago, so let's go to Pittsburgh.
Right. I mean, that on its own, I think makes this a cinematic masterpiece. The fact that that's the tip of the iceberg.
I agree completely.
I mean,
I fucking love this movie.
And I would watch a whole movie of Christopher Walken acting with penguins.
I know.
I was like, when I saw that, I was like, I'm up for a whole movie of this.
When he gets in the rubber ducky, twice he tries to put his finger in a penguin mouth. To my delight.
You twice, that's right. I think
great.
they speaking of Jim Carrey, I think they seriously miscast Mr. Popper's penguins. I think that should have been Walken all the way with real penguins.
That'd have been fucking great. All right, anything left for you?
I don't think so. I think we've covered all the bases. I guarantee you there's a layer of this movie that is equally as fascinating that we've not penetrated, but that's just the kind of movie
But
it
that's
is.
how deep this fucking movie is. Ladies and
The
gentlemen.
fact that it ends with, like, a biblical murder of all the children in
I know,
Gotham City.
right?
Talk about prescience, children in cages, my God.
They really did play that down because they were this close to getting an R rating. So, ladies and gentlemen, hey, reach out. If there's anything we missed on Batman Returns, you go ahead and let us know. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, I am Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. We are going to see you next time for Batman Forever. Hoofa. What I will describe as a step down. Say goodbye, Tom.
Just the pussy I've been looking for.
Perfect. Until next time.